Hi, so today is the 22nd of October 2021, and just because I saw a sign, so just acknowledging it. So when I was in Texas years ago and dealing with all of the stuff in reference to what happened to my daughter at McCoy Elementary School, as well as during the field trip to Fort Worth, there was a family that my son had befriended, and I got along with both of the parents, and they had a total of 3 children. They were all boys. One of the boys, the eldest, was from biologically a different dad. Biologically a different father, I should say. He is what it is. So I was told by the mom that there were issues in regards to the biological father of the eldest being a dad. And so she was saying that he was having problems with school, and I had gotten along with him, and so I went over to him and I said, I will make a deal with you. And he goes, what's the deal? And I said, your mom told me that you're having a difficult time in school with your grades, and she wants you to graduate. And it is important that you graduate high school. It's important that you get your education the correct way. And he kind of rolled his eyes, and I'm like, I know you're in the teenager mode, that's fine, but it's important that you really take this into consideration. And we talked for a little while, and I said, my deal is, if you graduate high school, I will be there. Now, this was before the Fort Worth Zoo, by the way. And so, as far as that situation, and so I had told him, as long as you graduate, I will be at your graduation. And he looked at me, he was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I said, no, I'm serious. I said, no matter what's going on, I know there's issues with your biological father. I know that, my son James hangs out with your little brothers, and, there's stuff going on as far as my daughter, but as important as education is to me, and about the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, and he looked at me, he's like, yeah, and I said, and that I went from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to 2nd grade math, and he's like, yeah. And I said, so just take in consideration that if I didn't have the education that I had before my head injury, it would have been much more difficult to recover. And he kind of got quiet, and I said, so you can see how important education actually is. And he nodded his head, and I said, so I promise. And if I make a promise, I keep my promises as much and as best as I can. And he was like, okay. I said, so your mom tells me that you graduate high school and all that, I will be at your I promise I will be at your graduation. And he was just like, well, that's what, my dad said. And I said, I'm not your dad. I'm not your mom. I know that. But because I'm friends with your mom, and because I'm friends with your stepdad, I'm and my son gets along with your little brothers and stuff, I promise I'll be there. And he goes, okay. He did the fairly typical teenage thing, and it's like, it's okay. That's fine. I know what, as I look, it's not the most normal. I know about certain things as far as my memory issues, deficits, and stuff like that. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not offended by that. I get it, because, I have to prove it. And with what you've been dealing with as far as your biological father is concerned, that's fine. I'll prove it. I promise I'll prove it. And so he graduated high school, and it was after the Fort Worth Zoo, where 3 adult volunteers did not keep track of my daughter. There were a total of 6 or 9 children, and 3 adult, supposedly females, who couldn't keep track of that. It is what it is. I had 5 or 6 children when I went to the Fort Worth Zoo, and I didn't lose any of them. That is what it is. And so after the situation, after the board meeting where the Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District did not say the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag, and then they also, if it's a normal thing, I wouldn't know because I was born and raised in New Jersey, they did not say the pledge to the state of Texas flag, probably because of the fact that they didn't do the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. So those people in Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District and those people, McCoy Elementary School, whatever that is as far as their issues, because I've always done what I could to respect the state of Texas, because that's where I woke up. I woke up at Fort Sam Houston, but because Fort Sam Houston is in San Antonio, Texas, now Military City, USA, it was a natural respect because of the way I was raised. And so I had my New Jersey flag because that's where I was born and raised, and also after the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pennsylvania Fields and Virginia, as far as the Pentagon and what had occurred after the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001, I decided, this is what I'm going to do to respect where I came from, because as I know, and those who have been in the Northeast know, there's a large number of people from New Jersey that commute to the New York City area, and I grew up with a lot of people that actually commuted to go work at the World Trade Center. And so that was my reasons. I had a few others, but that is what it is. And then I had the Texas flag, not just because I woke up in Texas and was regrowing up in Texas, but also my son and my daughter, who were born in the year of 2001 and the year of 2002, giving that acknowledgement, and then the American flag. So I'd hang the 3 flags on my house. And I did that in San Antonio, and I did that in Carrollton. Well, if they didn't do the pledge to the state of Texas flag because they had not done the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag because of all of the political problems that were going on in the year of 2008, 2009, and 2010, because you have to remember, in those years, specifically the Westboro Baptist Church was going and causing all of these protests against people who had the right to mourn. And so with all of those problems that they caused, the additional situations in reference to McCoy Elementary School and Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District, they had these issues. Now, not all of them, because there was one of the assistant supervisor, he had said that he had been in during Vietnam. And I had thanked him for his service when I was going through some of the meetings because of after the Fort Worth Zoo situation where they had lost my daughter. And so I basically did what I could, as best as I could as a mom. And while my daughter was going through the different hospitalizations and meetings with the school board district members, that particular assistant supervisor or assistant superintendent was kind, as best could be at that time. And then I came to the point of the graduation, and Tammy and David, the son's dad, stepdad and mom, they called and they were like, yeah, he's going to graduate high school. He's really going to do it. Like, we didn't think he was going to do it, but he's going to do it. And I was like, let me know when the graduation is. I was living in Cedar Park at the time because of my daughter's hospitalizations, doing what I could as best for my son as well as my daughter because of the healthcare guidelines for that time frame regarding my daughter's residential treatment stuff. And so made the whole thing happen, and You know, my son got to go hang out with his friends, which were the little brothers of this older brother. And so I get there, and one of the guys that was the head superintendent with the last name of Burns was speaking. And I had no one who had helped me after my scuba diving. It was less than a whole year after having scuba dove, landed at the bottom of the ocean at multiple locations, surfaced alive, did what I did as far as making sure safety and stuff, not just for my own scuba diving, but what was occurring. And so, specifically in reference to the Vandenberg scuba dive, no one that I knew was helping me as the way I would actually need because of the medical. Can say that's a similar situation after Walter Reed's situation, but in that reference, I go to the graduation and I do what I can to take pictures, but because of my issues that I was having at the time between the after effects from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, with the fact that there was no one that was helping me, not only in reference to my son and my daughter's situation, but no one was actually helping me as far as the time after my scuba dive. There was not one scuba diver that was assisting or anything like that. They didn't talk with me in person. Nobody did anything that helped with that I knew at the time. Not International Scuba, not Scuba Toys, no one. No one did anything. Not that was helpful, especially during those times. I had hoped that there would actually be a change in that regard, but that is what it is. Anyway, I see Burns, and I'm like, I cannot deal with this right now. I am dealing with everything in the world right now. You are the last person I need to see. You have no idea what my son and my daughter are dealing with. They haven't been able to take care of certain things because of the situation with their biological father's death, and all these other things. My ex-in-laws aren't helping. My biological mother, biological father, biological sister were playing games. And so this guy who had the nerve to make the decision to not have the Pledge of Allegiance said at that meeting, after everything that he and his administration, as far as Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District at that time, had failed to do repeatedly, I had to walk on the other side. After taking pictures, when he started speaking, it was, this is the safest thing I can do for myself, because I am beyond. I don't have the patience for this guy. You know, I don't have the time for this guy. I don't care about this guy. He has the nerve to I get that they have prearranged speakers, but I made a promise he's not even my biological son, but I made a promise, and I keep my promises as best as I can. This guy's, Burns's superintendent, whatever, his people were responsible for causing problems to my son, my daughter, and I, all of this stuff. The last thing I needed to deal with was seeing that superintendent. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go across I'm gonna remain calm. I'm gonna do what I can, because I cannot deal with this. And they had other board district, and I have no idea what a high school graduation is. I didn't graduate high school. I mean, I did, but I didn't go to the graduation ceremony. I graduated a semester early, so I don't know what high school graduations are. I know that they happen. I know that there's, you get your diploma. That's all I know. I have no idea what actually happens at a high school graduation. And I can say that in full now because my son didn't graduate from a high school that had a graduation ceremony. So I have no idea. Back in 2010, I had no idea what a high school graduation was. I didn't go through that. I did have a middle school graduation, but again, that was before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. So I have memory deficits. I have cognitive disorders. So I have no idea. I don't have any memory. So this guy, if he had ever thrown some sort of a temper tantrum, because he would have assumed most likely, because I look as I do. And as all of the different people that I dealt with in Carrollton, Texas, because I look as I do. I had my hairstyle as it is. I had my hair color, whichever shade of red as it is. I had my tattoos on my hands as they are. At minimum, the ones in the center. They came as they did as time. But those people in that school district at that time, if they went and ran their mouths because of their assumptions, additionally because of me being born and raised in New Jersey, the irony is that head injuries occur to not just people in the military. It's not just the Army branch that has ever had someone who had a head injury. It's not just the Air Force branch or the Coast Guard branch or the Marine Corps branch or the Navy branch of any branch of the armed forces of the United States of America. It's a thing. But not only that, there are civilians who have had head injuries. So it's one of those irony of you being a superintendent of a school board and being so elementary in your thought process that you would probably assume, and again, this is 2021 that I'm thinking about this, back then in 2010, you were probably so arrogant to think that you were ever important enough for me to care about as to anything to purposefully do in that regard. Because I would guesstimate that Superintendent Burns guy probably would think that he was special in comparison to the actual reasons for a high school graduation, and how sad and childish and really elementary school age, when you truly think about that, if he decided to go and have a little titty baby temper tantrum, the way kindergartners do. I wouldn't be surprised as to, certain things that occurred with the staff members as far as what they were doing. I wouldn't be surprised in reference to the adults, biologically adult volunteers or whatever, as to how they were doing. And I think that truly does stem from the fact that so many people before thought that it was intelligent when it wasn't, to talk to babies and infants with the goo goo gaga sort of thing in comparison to actually discussing things. So my son and my daughter, they both had been complimented as they complimented me about my son and my daughter's vocabulary. And I told them, well, I speak to my children as I would speak to another individual. I don't want my son or my daughter to be stupid, so I'm not going to speak with them going goo goo gaga when they were infants. I'm going to speak with them and I'm changing this and I'm doing this in comparison. So hypothetically, if that guy and or his family were thinking that I was anything of whatever stereotype, how sad to have so many people from that area actually have the audacity to look down on me at any aspect. I mean, I didn't go and flaunt or anything that I had earned 26 scuba diving certifications on my own, but then there's probably that stereotype because I did it on my own. Now, when I say I did it on my own, that means I paid for my scuba diving on my own. I paid the bill. I used my card. I paid for that. That came out of my account. So I didn't have some male or female pay for it. I paid for it. I didn't go in a relationship with somebody else to go do, I think that when it comes to people who go to do the what is it, the marriage, and then they go on a honeymoon or whatever, and they're like, here, put that in your mouth, shut up, instead of, you know, actually whatever, unless you actually enjoy scuba diving, and then that's a whole other ball of wax. But I was at every individual certification of my 26 scuba diving certifications I earned on my own. I didn't have any relationships with any of the scuba diving instructors beyond they were my instructor for my particular scuba diving certification. Earned it as far as my specific work for the workbooks, as well as all of the other books that I had read and studied additional information over to ensure that I correctly learned to know, to understand, and what I could to comprehend the different certifications, because I did not ever want to have any problems when I was scuba diving. The last thing that I would need is forgetting something, of course. So I had a really big, important thing where it was, and it's always been, I want to make sure that I have the safest descent, the safest scuba dive, and the safest ascent for every individual scuba dive for each individual time that I ever go scuba diving. And irony of that. So then there was the U-Haul situation when it came to my scuba dive gear. And that was after I told only one person about what type of depth gauge computer I had. And so the depth gauge computer I had is actually a part of one of my scuba diving certifications. It's a Sunto computer. It's a military grade computer. I told this guy, Temple of Flesh, as far as I was told, the owner, director, he directed the Exotic Easter thing, him and Krista, as far as what I was told their names were. And so, lo and behold, when I go to move back to San Antonio, the U-Haul situation, because of all the problems when it came to the other stuff, and if I had actually just been taken care of correctly instead, they would have whatever. But I had the plans to take it to Fort Sam Houston because of the Navy Marine Special Warfare Unit. And I woke up there. The Navy and the Marine Corps taught me how to count to 10 after waking up from my coma. So it was one of those, here, this is all I could do to say thank you to you guys. You know, this is the work that I did. And, you know, you guys taught me, you know, Army taught me this, and, you know, Air Force taught me this, and you guys with the Navy and the Marines, you know, you with the Coast Guards, you know, you here, this is what I wanted. And instead, the U-Haul situation happens, and all of the work that I did as far as going and getting what I got, so that way it was actually a safe way to do it instead. Had a U-Haul situation. That was in 2012 when moving from Irving, Texas to San Antonio, Texas. So if there were the transmissions in reference to messages, instead of just allowing me to make the correct decision, because I actually knew what was at the base, instead that happened. But going back to that graduation ceremony, if that male burns through a child elementary school titty baby temper tantrum, I had a minimal amount of respect for him because of the way I was raised. So I can respect that you have that position. I don't have to respect you, but I could respect that you have that position. Now, here's the thing about that, though. When it comes to respecting someone that actually has that position, you respect them by not causing problems to them. So when you respect them, you actually go and take care of and assist where absolutely as best as possible in comparison to what I've dealt with. Because in order to respect the position of who has the title and the ownership of whatever title there is because of what was earned, you do stuff to make it more easy for them. You make it much more simple so that way they can do their job because you have that title. So, okay, he had the superintendent, whatever. If he actually thought, or anybody else was like, oh, she's so whatever, unlike whatever assumptions there were, I was there at that high school graduation. I think it was June or July in 2010 for Carrollton, as far as the Tammy and David's son. So that way my son could play with their sons because they were friends. And also because I made a promise to Tammy's eldest son. And yes, his biological father did not show up to the graduation that I know of. I wasn't officially informed. Or I should say, when informed, I wasn't introduced to him. So I made sure to keep my promise. And you would think that a superintendent, as well as a school board, as well as a school, would actually appreciate someone who actually cares about genuine education and then rewarding such by keeping actual promises for that assistance. So I'm still glad and proud of the fact that he was able to get the stuff squared away so that way he could actually graduate high school. I'm glad for that. I'm still glad that I was able to be out there. And, you know, my daughter was dealing with the hospital stuff. My son, you know, I was doing the best as I could. Legal widow mom. So I'm doing everything I can on my own. And so I did what I could as best as I could. And again, it's 2021. But if that superintendent, I'm going to leave the male title in reference to the performance for the 2011 Exotic Easter, for the two that went shopping. I'm going to leave that title to that male as far as Superintendent Burns, but I'm going to change it from a D to an E as far as what particular bag that would be used, in my personal opinion, because if that really truthfully was a titty baby temper tantrum over that, maybe he had been around too many elementary schoolers. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. Maybe he was spoken to as a baby instead of, that the knowledge that you're going to grow up to be an adult. That's how I spoke with my son and my daughter, is I knew that they were going to grow up to be an adult. Yes, would I make my voice a little bit higher pitch so that way, they felt more comfortable because of certain things? That's fine. No big deal. But that was my son and my daughter, my infant son and my daughter, and their vocabulary was able to show that because of the way I personally raised my son and my daughter in comparison to what occurred. And so I just wanted to clarify that, just in case, okay, it's 21 years later, it's 2021, and it's 11 years later, but then there's that, because I'm sure the assumption would be to ask my biological parents and my biological sister instead of just asking me. So I just thought that was a quick little irony that would have you on that. So you guys have a good day. And I thought that was pretty whatever, but fine. Going and celebrating somebody's graduation. Oh, okay. That's a choice. So, but with the COVID thing this year, a whole bunch of people since 2020 and now 2021 haven't been able to do any graduation ceremonies the way they did according to the news. I mean, I'm sure if you have certain situations, you're allowed more than others. I wouldn't know. I mean, I don't pay attention to that. So, but I just wanted that clarification, because if that really was that, what a misjudgment. Wow. What a lack of intelligence. I wonder what type of degree, as far as that piece of paper would be, to be a superintendent. You guys have a good one.